Hey guys, welcome back. Nate with another YouTube video. This time recapping some more Reign of Jafar set champs that I ended up playing. And spoiler alert, we did it. We're back. We're in the map bracket. We were a little bit worried. We were getting to the problem area of I did very badly at the beginning of the set, and that was kind of a really bad come down because last set I ended up winning 3 hero mats, going down to going 2-3 and 3 set champs in the beginning was not ideal. So finally getting a mat felt very good this last weekend. I did top 4 another set champs, which I'm also going to go over as well in this video. So we got some stuff to go over, so let's get into it. So the first set champs I played was this last Saturday. It was 14 or 16 people, something along those lines. It was only enough to have 4 rounds cut to top 4. Whereas if you have over 17 people in your event, you usually do that 5 round mark cut to top 8. So obviously, to get into possible mat territory, you have to do quite well in the Swiss because you can even bubble out if you go like 3-1 sometimes in some settings. I was very hot on this one where I went 3-0 in the beginning and then was able to draw into the top 4, and I will talk about my matchups in a second here. But first, I just want to go over the deck I played, which was the Steel Song deck that I called Namari's Hamster Ranch. Again, Ranch and Steel Song are kind of an inside joke on my team a little bit, but this deck is basically your prime version of Steel Song, right? Where we're doing the Cindy's, we're doing all the different songs with the aerials, and we're playing a whole new world. Whereas we're not in like an aggro version playing Doc. The biggest things that I decided to do in this deck were mostly play Namari, which I'm very fond of this card. I think this card is quite strong, both figuratively and literally, in that she gets a lot of strength when you have cards in your discard. The nice thing about Namari is you can filter through bad cards. Like one of the biggest problems in Steel Song is you tend to get clogged up with things like whole new worlds or just random uninkables that you don't really want. And so Namari lets you filter those out for cards that are actually useful. The nice other big thing that I was doing in this deck is I was playing one Grab Your Sword. I like Grab Your Sword a lot because people tend to not respect it as much against Steel Song lately. Whereas if you can play it, it really can throw people off or just like really swing the game into your favor. So I like a one of, again, another good card to filter out with Namari especially. Though probably the most lackluster song is going to be this World's Greatest Criminal Mind. I find this to just be ink that you can find with Ariel normally. Whereas there's occasions where you can kill like a shark or like the Maui Hero to All. There's a lot of things you can do with this card, but usually it tends to be ink in most matchups. Otherwise, the rest of the deck is fairly standard, I would say. We're doing the Rhino Shift package, which is just like obviously the most strong thing. I like Troubadour over Vanessa. Resist is very strong into other steel decks. And then I tend to play Daisy, and you will notice an absence of Naveen. I find Naveen to be, while a very explosive card, does not always feel good enough to help you close out games properly. Like when you play a Naveen and you get like a whole new world or Zeus off of it feels great. I like Daisy because she's really good on turn 1. And then she's also really good at just helping you close out games. You know, once you can start to like whole new world, spam guys, you really want these 1-drops that quest for 2 as a way to just actually finish the game. Because that can sometimes be your biggest problem is you'll like whole new world, you'll give your opponent stuff, and then you actually won't get to the ability to finish the game before they have created a board state that is difficult to deal with. Everything else still fairly standard. I did play one copy of Aerial Sonic Warrior. This is kind of a bit of a pet card. We also did just get an enchanted one recently, so you gotta play the enchanted, right? But the other big thing too that I like about this card is it really does give you the ability to control boards. It turns all of your songs into basically double blasts. You know, sometimes you can go ahead and basically go like, I'm gonna sing Storm and kill one guy, kill another guy, and you're just really in a great position with this card. So I'm a big fan of this one. She can be slow at times, but she did win me a couple games actually as a card in my deck. So that's the deck, and now I'll go over some of the matchups. So round one, we did play Blurple. Again, this is a local set champ, so I knew basically everybody at the set champs. This is one of my good friends, and he's playing Blurple, and Blurple is very usually a quite good matchup for Steel Song. There are some things you have to like very much so keep in mind, which is some of them do tech the 7-cost Ursula, which my build that I'm displaying here doesn't. I generally just give a basic build for something without people's various tech options. They do play Ursula, which can be very difficult versus Steel Song, and then on top of that is Monstro. So the biggest thing you have to balance in this matchup tends to be not questing too hard into a monster play if you can help it. The other big thing is, but you usually can just tend to swarm the board and make it difficult for them to answer all of your things, especially when cards like Iago die very quickly to cards like Storm and Strength. You tend to be able to get past those things quite easily and be able to swarm the board because the deck is usually good at dealing with like one thing at a time. That's a base level of how this matchup tends to go. My matchup with my friend, game one, I had a bit of a lackluster start, but so did my friend, which allowed me to capitalize and eventually swarm the board and win. Game two, he found a lot of his ramp and was able to take up my characters and leave me in a rough position most of the time. Game three, I think he had a little bit down luck, but I was able to finish it off in a tense finish with him not being able to find a Monstro at the time that he needed to. Overall, this matchup always feels quite good for Steel Song. It's kind of the one matchup. My friend was sort of cursing me the entire time because I'm not normally considered a Steel Song player. If anything, my wife tends to be quite the Steel Song player. I personally usually like red purple. Obviously, that's kind of my gimmick, right? That's my big thing is I love red purple. But I decided to play Steel Song this time, and obviously queuing into a good matchup round one is great for me. So I did end up taking that game set 2-1. Next, I played against a green-purple tempo deck. This is, again, another one of my friends and teammates who I ended up playing against, and he was kind of just telling me the entire time, he was like, oh man, I really didn't want to see you, because this would be considered a solid matchup for Steel Song. Generally speaking, they have cards like Ursula to get rid of your songs, but the thing that I noticed that was the biggest takeaway from this was that Rhino and Resist makes it very difficult for them to actually be able to interact. And I did tend to have Rhino in all of the games that we played in the Swiss rounds, for better or for worse. The second game I lost because he was able to outswarm, and I did end up drawing 3 whole new worlds in a row, and the game came to a close when he Ursula'd me and I had to show him 3 whole new worlds in my hand, and I was like, let's go to game 3. Game 1, once again, like I said, just really rode the Rhino to victory. Not a lot for him to do against that card very specifically. Game 3, I just was able to control all of his characters and prevent him from really doing much. It wasn't a huge gameplay game. The biggest thing that happened was he did end up controlling my board to a point where he got a 7-cost Ursula out, which is the card that some of them play, and it had 2 damage on it, and I was in a position where I was either going to have to trade 3 dudes into it or have a Zeus, and I literally drew the Zeus that turn. So it was just my game to win at that point. But overall, this matchup, I think it's mostly in favor of Steel Song. There are definitely things the green-purple deck can do that lets it gain percentage points. But I did end up beating my friend 2-1 in this set of games. Next, I played against what I would consider a blue steel mid-range deck, once again piloted by another one of my teammates, and this I did end up beating 2-0. The main things that I kind of came across was they really just couldn't establish a board as much as they needed to. This version, again, like I said, not exactly their list. I just kind of put together a list that I had from before. But they were playing things like Pleakley and stuff like that. And the biggest problem with cards like that is you really need the ability to establish and keep a character around to be able to leverage a card like Pleakley specifically. The other biggest thing that they came across when playing against me was they would try to establish something like a beast and it would just get Zeused. My aerials were really on fire when it comes to finding Zeuses, and then they would just like establish something like a Cogsworth in the end, and it just wouldn't be good enough to be able to beat me. I tended to be able to swarm the board and have a lot of resist, which again, the resist on your Rhino and the Troubadour here are both very, very strong abilities that really make steel decks kind of throw a fit a little bit. Things like Tinkerbell, things like Fire the Cannon, Strength, Zeus, Grab Your Sword, all get slightly worse when it comes to having resist. It just is very difficult to answer your board, and it gives you the ability to, oh my goodness, I am accidentally magnifying my background image here, but it gives you the ability to swarm the board in a way that is very difficult to interact. And then eventually I had Namari to like kind of uh, once again do that filtering, and ultimately I took the win 2-0 here against my friend. Very fun games all in all for me, but maybe not so much for him. Not a lot to say on this deck style. So being 3-0, I was feeling quite good, and I was able to draw in the fourth round for top 4 against my opponent, who also was playing green purple tempo such as my other friend before. And then that is what I met in the top 4 was my friend once again on this green purple tempo deck. I did end up losing this set of games. Game 1 felt really solid, ended up being able to take it. Game 2 floundered a little bit due to some Ursula. Oh my goodness, this card. My friend did have this card on turn 2 every game, which is quite good, especially when you are relying on your hand to get you there. Biggest thing was him ripping that and then me not having removal for different things like Cursed Merfolk, and his ability to eventually just swarm the board. We did have quite good games and quite a lot of back and forth, but just not being able to keep my removal and then needing to play Whole New World at less than optimal times did end up leading me to losing that game. Then game 3, I was really trying to ride a shifted Rhino to victory because I did shift it on turn 2, but I ended up getting stuck on 3 ink, and what ultimately cost me was a misplay singing a song with Ariel at a time that I didn't need to, and then she was challenged and defeated when I had a Whole New World in my hand. I think if I could go back, I maybe would have been able to take the game if I was more careful with my Ariel. Overall, I did lose the 3 games there, and my friend did end up actually taking the mat home this day. My friend, he has 3 mats from this set, so he was doing quite well with this set in general. This deck overall, to go into the Steel Song, I would definitely play this again. This is what I would recommend if somebody was going to play Steel Song somewhere. You could definitely make some subtle changes if you want to, like Ariel's not necessary. Some people may not like Namari as much as I do, or Grab Your Sword as much as I do. I totally would respect those card choices. But I personally just really like this. If I was going to run back Steel Song this set, I would probably play this exact list again. I had a lot of fun with it. Next is the big dog.
The champ is here!
Ended up taking me home a first place mat, along with some other goodies that I'll go over at the end of this video here. But this deck was green purple discard, or another name I like for it is Oops All Diablos, just like that take on like Oops All Crunchberries. Quite fun deck and very interesting. This list in particular, I was started out by a list sent to me by my friend Damien, who I drove with to this event and really appreciated by him. I wanted to make sure to give him credit for a good solid list that he had given me. I did make some subtle changes to his deck, but I'll go over what I ended up playing here, which is pretty base level. We're playing some 1-drop purple Diablo, 1-drop green Diablo, and 2-drop green purple Diablo, so we can shift into the big one. Obviously this card, everybody's quite familiar with the bird. Bird is the word. best card around for quite a long time. Probably won't be missed, though, along with his partner in crime, Prince John, greediest of all. So, like any good discard deck, we're playing a bunch of sudden chills. The nice thing that you get to do with this deck is shift the Diablo with pull deliver. It's really good to have a card that you want to pitch for your Diablo shift. Every other deck, it kind of feels like a real cost to have to be able to ditch the card for your Diablo. Not in this deck. You are so happy to pitch these pull the levers in order to play these wrong levers as their intended purpose, which is to bottom deck things. Not a lot to go in there. I'm sure you've seen green purple discard a bunch of times. Notable things that we're playing in here: Peter Pan, big fan of this card. I really like the ability to rush in and hit different things and then be able to juice up your genies and Agos. Chip, nice solid card to curve out with Prince John into Chip. So even if you're under like a Pete lock, you're still going to get a card out of it. And he's just a very good solid body. I was significantly more impressed with Chip than I thought I would be, because I'd even asked if this card is super necessary before playing the list, but ended up a very big fan and a Chip believer. I was playing one copy of Bell Accomplished Mystic, which I have seen some people run. Very good card over the course of the day. Just really put in a lot of work, and the ability to move some damage on a board that is stagnated a little bit, or especially on your Elsa, which tends to hold damage quite a bit, really makes this card quite strong. And her ability to 2-quest just allows you to change the tempo of the game and swing it into your favor a lot of times, just being a big 4/4 body. Cricky, I am playing 2 copies of Cricky. Some people only like 1, some people like none. I really find that Cricky tends to be a card that can really swing the game in your favor, almost to the effect of like Big Sisu, in that usually you're going to trade a pile of your board into their board, and you're going to be left with this big 3-quester. The ability to quest for 3 after you've like emptied out a board of stuff is just really, really strong. Otherwise, not a lot to go into here. I will say the biggest thing for me was get really high roll your opponents. I was able to turn to shift Diablo more often than not this set champs, and then able to sing friends quite a bit. And that is just so much card draw. You're talking about basically finders keepersing by turn 2 after your opponent. So even if they can quickly answer your Diablo, you're just in such a good position card advantage wise. So round 1, I ended up playing against green steel discard, which I could imagine is actually not a great matchup for me if your opponent gets the right sequence of cards, especially if they are on the play, which my opponent was actually on the play, and then they are able to shift to Diablo and then kill your Diablo with like Let the Storm Rage on. I could see that tending to be an area where you do lose the game more often than not against them, but I did end up having quite high roll draws in games 2 and 3, mostly game 3. Game 1 was very weird because both of my opponent had hyper less than optimal hands. I was worried because my deck wasn't going to start until turn 2 or turn 3, basically, when I was going to have to hard cast a pull the lever in order to just draw some cards and get back into it. My opponent also had a very slow hand where they just needed the right like songs, because they had a 1-cost Diablo with no shift, and they had an Ursula, but they didn't really have any songs to do anything with it. So I was actually able to capitalize and just play genies and other things to basically get to the point where they were not able to handle my board anymore. And then I kind of high rolled them at the end of the game by going into top deck mode, getting a friends, playing the friends, using that to get a pull the lever. So I was really able to create situations where I won. The biggest thing that happened in that game that I thought was very interesting was, if you look at wrong lever, that card actually just says chosen character to their player's hand. So one of the things that you don't think to do very often is actually do something to your characters. But I did have a Peter Pan out and a genie, and my opponent had a Beast Tragic Hero in play, which allowed me, and it was exerted, which allowed me to actually. The beast had 1 damage on it from something. I can't remember what my opponent had hit or done with it, but it had taken out something. I was able to hit it with the genie using the rush from the Peter Pan, wrong lever my genie back to my hand, and then play the genie again to finish off the beast. So that's something that you don't always see a lot of times because we're usually so focused on using our removal spells on our opponent's characters, but it actually ended up being more value for me to use it on my own character. So that's a very noteworthy thing there. Otherwise, I did end up just like really high rolling them through the whole game mostly. I was a good friend of mine, so we kept joking about how unlucky he was. But overall, this matchup, as I'll talk about in a second here again, because I did play against another green steel opponent round 2, had felt pretty strong for me overall, actually. I could see spots where things couldn't go well, but I definitely felt very confident after my round 1. Round 2, we went back into it with another green steel opponent and another friend of mine in the area. And this, I think his version went a little bit bigger, kind of like the one I'm showing here. It was even playing Zeus's, Along Came Zeus and Muses. So I thought that was quite a bit of go high. He ended up having some rough draws, and then on top of that, the discard matchup, when you have rough draws and you need to ink cards you don't want to ink, and then you're getting them discarded with various things like Sudden Chill, it's very difficult to keep up. One of the big things that happened that I thought was interesting is we were playing literal chicken with our Diablos, right? So my friend, I shifted a Diablo, my friend shifted a Diablo, and neither one of us really wanted to kill it until I was okay with killing his Diablo because I had a Prince John out and some discard in hand, and I felt more comfortable with my position. Overall, I think the matchup can be a little bit of back and forth, but I felt pretty confident. I did beat my friend 2-1 in this matchup, and I will end up seeing him again in the top 8. But overall, I felt pretty confident with this matchup. Round 3, I ended up getting paired against my friend who I had drove up with, and we decided to ID. Actually, we were both 2-0, and we decided to be better if we didn't team kill, basically. And we were just like, let's try to meet in top 8, or however that's going to end up working for us, and we'll just try to get our 1 win. Because all we really need is 1 win if we draw right now. It's usually nice to draw in. I kind of wanted to play for a second, but then it kind of made more sense in my head to just like see what we get paired into and try to win the next 2 rounds. So I will go over this because I did face this friend in top 4. Finally, I played against another friend of mine in round 4 where he was playing Red Blue Shark. And I will not lie to you, I ended up having the most disgusting possible draws with the green purple Diablo deck of my life in game 1. Game 1, I kept 7 cards. I just straight up kept 7 cards because I had the ability to play 1-drop Diablo, shift it with pull the lever. I had the ability to play 2-drop Diablo and then shift that later on with another card, but I ended up I didn't have it in hand originally, but I top decked the friends going second. So I was able to shift, sing, play the second one, shift, just keep going. And needless to say, when you draw so many cards in a game, it's very difficult for your opponent to be able to manage, especially when you're going to be discarding a lot of their hands. Especially for these ramp decks, if they don't have very specific fast starts, you tend to just be able to run them over because they need that ink and they need their hand, and their hand advantage is very important. So like the cards that they're not inking are essential to them, and the cards that they are inking are gone by that point, especially when they have to use things like Tipo to ramp. So you end up getting a lot of card advantage, and they end up getting stuck at things like 6 or 7 ink at times that they really need that like 8 to 9 ink or 8 to 10 ink, you know, something significantly more to be able to do more. So I really just was able to insulate myself by riding the 2 Diablos for a long time. He wiped my board, then I just reset with different cards like Prince John and Genie, and eventually was just able to go. That's like the biggest thing that you need to do when you play against red blue as a deck like this, like the sort of tempo style deck, is just make sure to taper your threats a lot. Recognize when it's good to add to the board and when it's not good to add to the board. You really have to pay attention to what we call clock in the game. So that means you have to go, all right, I know that I can win in 2 or 3 turns here. If I do this, if I add this to the board, I can escalate that to just like 1 to 2 turns all of a sudden, which is very important to do. But it's also important not to overextend. That's like the biggest card game thing that you can do, is just get used to when you're playing against sweepers, making sure that if you can help it, you taper in the sweeper. Sometimes you have to just go for it. Sometimes there is no other option. Sometimes if they get the sweeper, you're just dead. So you're just like, all right, I'm going to give you 1 turn and see if we can make it. Ultimately, I just ended up taking these games due to the deck's ability to discard his hand, and then my opponent probably had some closer to rough hands. I didn't talk to him a lot about it, but like game 2, he ended up inking 3 McDuck Manors, and in my opinion, McDuck Manor would be probably one of the strongest cards that if you can get it out, it will end up creating a lot of problems for the deck because you have to just allocate so many resources to be able to hit this stupid location, right? Overall, did get to 2-0 this matchup, felt very confident leaving that matchup, and then I got to draw into top 8. So once again in top 8, continuing with the theme of playing against green steel players today, I had gone against my friend who I had played in round 2 on green steel, and I did end up 2-0ing him this time. My deck really did its thing a lot of the games and ended up grinding out some strong games with Prince John, facing his Prince Johns versus my Prince Johns, and just like waiting for the ability to be able to friends and then discard them at the right time. Overall, there was a lot of play here that I felt really confident in, but did end up getting the 2-0 against this green steel deck. Not much more to say than what I had said earlier. Then I did end up meeting my friend who I had rode up with and ID'd with in round 3, and he was on Blurple. And we had actually talked a lot about the matchup on our drive up to the tournament, but I kind of had felt like there would be a lot less ability for me to do anything in this matchup as much because he has so many evasives and so many ways to be able to kind of answer my threats. I did end up getting in a good position game 1 because I had saw his hand with the Diablo. He had he had 2 inkable cards and then a bunch of uninkable cards. So I'm like, all right, if I can like swarm this hand with the ability to discard, I will be in a very good position. So I was happy that I had kept like a good Prince John hand, because that was in my head was gonna be the biggest thing, was as long as I don't get Finders Keepers to death, which is like a real possibility because they do run quite a few of this card, I can just shred his hand and make him in a very tough position the entire time, which was kind of the case, right? Once you get sudden chilled and pull the levered to discard enough, that really does come down to a point where like all of a sudden you're like, all right, I'm stuck with like a goat on the board and not much else going on. So I was able to take game 1 that way. Game 2, he ended up just finding everything in the right sequence. He had the Popsicle Bell start, and then there was a mid-game play where I had made him discard some and had hoped that I was going to ride that to victory. But he ended up Finders Keepers into singing a friends, into singing another friends, and then at that point, I just felt like I had been attacking the wrong axis, and I just died. Game 3, I had a very strong start with the ability to make him discard, and then I was able to put him in a position where he needed an Elsa and just never found the needed Elsa, and I was able to take over the game that way. And take home game 3 in our top 4. Finally, in the finals, I played against a dump truck purple steel aggro list, and this is not exactly the list I played against, but the biggest thing that I found is that this card represents a lot more than 1 damage at any given time. So game 1, I'm on the draw, which was a little bit unfortunate for me playing aggro, so I kind of knew it was going to be an uphill battle from there. So game 1, my opponent is able, I had heard that they were playing this card before, So I really wanted to make sure I had the 1-2 Diablo instead of really relying on the 0-1 Diablo, which is going to end up dying very quickly to a dump truck. I had made the right call there because I had the 1-drop Diablo and then got dump trucked immediately. And 1-2 with dump truck is not as scary as your 0-1 getting dump trucked. The biggest thing in game one was I just was not able to handle the board, sort of swarming of the board that he was able to do. He seemed to have an answer every time I did anything. I tried to be very smart with how I played my 3-cost Diablo instead of just running it out there, which is always something you want to do, but he just had the right removal at the right time and wasn't able to take that game. Game two, I had to be very, very careful because things were very tight. I knew that he was playing the dump truck stuff, and he did have a solid start. And the biggest thing was I was a little worried because he was playing actually the 6-cost uninkable Hades. That when a character is banished on your turn, you gain 2 lore. So I was really racing against this. There was kind of a very big tightrope walk between my ability to race against this and deal with that card. So I was able to bounce it once with wrong liver, and I was also able to eventually kill it in the right position. Cricky did an amazing job at allowing me to clear his board there and get into a position where I was able to win just by the skin of my teeth in game two. Game three, I was able to kind of, pun intended here, right, dumpster my opponent because I ended up getting to see his hand with a Diablo and ended up knowing that he had dump truck, snake, and then a fox as well to be able to get back to dump truck later. So I had to be very careful, but I did end up shifting my Diablo with a pull the lever. I only mulliganed 1 card in my setup because I did have this. So I just really had to make sure that I was in a position to be able to handle it. The funniest thing I had to do to make sure that my Diablo didn't die, because my Diablo did have 1 damage on it from a dump truck previously, I had to play the full-fledged version of Wrong Liver on a single dump truck because I knew he had a fox in hand, and I really wanted to try to ride this Diablo to victory, and that ended up snowballing me into the ability to play this Diablo, and then hard play a second one of these in order to be able to draw a ton of cards and win the game with card advantage and just big characters. And that is how I ended up taking the finals of this set champs. So that's kind of a recap of the 2 set champs I played. So some cool stuff that I got out of the set champs that I played, because sometimes places do fun prizing, is one of the things I got was this very cool sort of metal placard or poster thingy that says set championship winner at the store. Shout out to VB Games and More for doing some cool extra prizing. I'm always a big fan when they do. Obviously, I got the mat, which I showed. And then the other cool thing they do is these sort of lasered engraved mugs for their set champs winners, which I had seen people do, and I was like kind of excited to get one. And it does say Reign of Jafar Champion right there, which is very, very cool. So I'm excited to keep this on my desk and kind of remember the fun times. Overall, great set champs. I think I'm going to end up doing one more this weekend, but I'm probably going to play something a little bit more on the fun side than on the completely meta side. I don't completely know yet. I could always just switch it up to a different play style of a meta deck. Really just kind of whatever I'm feeling that day. We're going to see where we go from there, and then we'll be getting into Fabled season soon. Probably talk about some more reveals like I did the past one. I enjoyed getting the yap about cards coming back and new cards. So we'll see what we get when we get there, and then eventually Fabled will come out, and I'll talk some more about that when we get closer. So if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.